The 540 is brought to you by StarCityGames.com's weekly sale. Go to StarCityGames.com/sale, and this week you can save 15% off of every non-basic land in Magic. That's right. Take 15% off every single non-basic land, whether you're getting it for your modern deck, your commander deck, your cube, anything, all of the above, doesn't matter. 15% off. Come get in on this land grab now until September 7th. That's Tuesday, September 7th at 10:59 a.m. Eastern Time. 15% off of every single non-basic land on the website. Head over to StarCityGames.com/sale. The 540 is also brought to you by Coalesce Apparel and Design. If you want to get the coolest Magic t-shirts and hoodies and stickers, go to coalesceapparel.shop. And if you find something you like, use gift code SCG to save 10% off at checkout. That's coalesceapparel.shop. Nobody made what they wanted, so they made it themselves.
What's up, everybody? Cedric Phillips here, stopping by real quick to let you know about one of Star City Games' newest podcasts, The Receivables, hosted by yours truly, alongside my partner in crime, of course, Patrick Sullivan, where the two of us discuss Magic sets, both past and present, from top to bottom. On every episode of The Receivables, you're going to hear us talk about the facts of a set, the mechanics of a set, the cycles of a set, you know, the boring stuff, before we get into some crazy stories of when we were playing Magic during the times that the set was legal. We've got a ridiculous award show where we give out awards like the Char Rumbler Award for weirdest card in a set, the Oko Thief of Crowns Award for best card in the set, and a whole bunch more, before we finally decide, hey, what card won the set and what letter grade should we give the set? It's a whole lot of fun. We're having a blast recording them. Hopefully you have the opportunity to listen to it and you enjoy it as much as we're enjoying recording them. Where can you find it? StarCityGames.com or wherever else you listen to your podcast. The Receivables every single week here at SCG.
Welcome back, one and all, to the 540, where sometimes we talk about Cube, sometimes we talk about talking about Cube, and sometimes we even Cube ourselves. I am Justin Parnell. You can find me at jparnell1 on Twitter, and of course, my co-host, who probably does more cubing than I do due to digital applications. He's much smarter because of that.
I'm Ryan Overturf, and I don't know if cube drafting on Magic Online makes me smarter than anybody, but it does mean that I cube draft more than a lot of people.
And a good segue to my own setup, because that's not going to help you today, Ryan.
Oh, no.
Because today we're talking about the nitty gritty of a physical cube. One you hold in your hands, you look at and smell, and hold close to your chest so it never leaves you.
Stare longingly at.
Exactly.
You sit around the house for the 500th, 600th consecutive day.
Yeah, it sounds like a hitting a little too close to home now.
Well, I had to bring the mood down because you said that my experience online didn't matter, so I have to.
I didn't expect to turn this into a modern, like a realistic horror podcast episode.
I'm sorry for reminding everybody. I'm sure that this form of content is one of many forms of escapism for people, which it is just kind of a need for that. So I get it. And I'm sorry for reminding you that there is an entire world out there and all of its horrors.
Yeah, we're trying to stay away from that. That reminds me, I guess this is semi-related. Have you seen the Bo Burnham special Inside?
I have, yes.
Yeah. That was an experience for me. I'm glad I watched it, and I'm really glad that he made it. I don't have any desire to watch it again for probably another year and a half, I'm hoping.
I know a number of people that sing some of the songs on and off. Now and again, I get some of them stuck in my head.
Yeah.
But watching the whole special, I don't really need to bring the mood down like that from my personal free time.
Yeah, that just reminded me. It is it that's something that after I watched it, like I was like, do I want to keep watching this? Like I do, because I respect what's happening, but I don't think I'm enjoying it, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I've grown an appreciation for the somber, the sad, the relatable as I've gotten older. And there's sort of that kind of bittersweetness that I really enjoy there, where you're like sad, but you're kind of smiling. If you're into that, there's a lot to like in that special if you haven't seen it yet. And if that sounds horrible and not enough escapism for you, stay away.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever watched anything that's more relatable, I think is a good way to put it.
Yeah, definitely. Outside of the fact that his living quarters are much nicer than mine, he does look as upset to be in them.
Yeah. Meaning the living quarters become more of a prison and become meaningless regardless of how nice they are, which is largely, I think, part of the point. But let's turn the mood around, even though I drove us down this path. Today we're talking about something that was actually suggested by a listener. So a few weeks ago, we were messaged on Twitter by Josh Conert, who is at xconey.
Looks like Jason Conert. Josh Conert,
Jason,
who works for SCG.
I know, he's my coworker.
Yeah.
Yes, Jason Conert. Thank you. Although I do know that Josh is likes a cube every now and again as well. But yes, Jason Conert at xconey on Twitter reached out to us and said, hey, Ryan and Justin, loving the podcast. I think it would be great to get a Logistics of Cube episode. Spoiler alert. You're going to. I know Justin mentioned how he never lets people shuffle his cube anymore. Why so? Best way to shuffle / randomize seed packs, storage solutions, etc. So that's the episode today, because this is something, as soon as Ryan and I heard it, we're like, this is a great idea. And this is something that we have spent many, many hours thinking about personally. So, of course, it would make a great podcast episode.
Yeah, there's just tons going on here. When we talk about Cube, certainly on the podcast, I'm so many years into it at this point that I'm thinking about play experiences and pick orders, but there's a lot of peripheral stuff. In fact, probably the most common question that I'm tagged with on Twitter these days is, how many basic lands do I need for a Tubert? And so that answer to that question and many more will be contained in this podcast episode.
Yeah, there's definitely, this is full of questions that I get all the time, especially for people that are making their first cube, or even like a cube that they like of a size or something that they've never made before. And this is just, these are all extremely common questions. So big ups to Jason for suggesting this to be a topic, because I think this is a useful one.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess we'll just jump into it then. I mean, we know that you need a cube or some peripheral stuff, but I guess a big thing is how do you get people together? You need friends, or I guess at least acquaintances together to cube. And just in general, I think it's good to have a space in some capacity that's dedicated to organizing cubes. That can be a Discord, something of that nature. You can try to do Facebook events. I think those are a little annoying, though maybe not more annoying than what I usually do. We have a group chat we've had going for several years locally. I originally put the group chat together when I was trying to get regular drafts when I first built the Spooky Cube. And the cube has gone, the chat rather, has gone through many names between now and then. Originally, it was Spooky Cube Chat, Ghoul Kids Only.
Got it.
And Love it. Today, the chat name is Fellow Vaccinated Cradleys. So it's gotten significantly more deranged. There's a lot of inside jokes over the years. But anyway, we talk about all kinds of stuff. That's kind of the downside of the Facebook chat. Is just we're all just friends and just talk about this, that, and the other thing. Though it is still somewhat useful because the people I cube with are in the chat. So it's a good way to organize people.
Yeah, the specific purpose. At least we're still able to use it for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is similar. So I'm in a unique situation, I think, for most people. My 9-to-5 job is I'm the purchasing manager at Star City Games, and I have a lot of employees, and by virtue of the department that I run, basically 100% of them play Magic. So the way that I mostly get cube drafts together is because all of the people that are in my area that I know work at Star City Games, with the exception of like a small handful of people that used to work at Star City Games that are still Magic players. So I just have we use Microsoft Teams for our like internal messaging within the company. So I just created a Microsoft Teams channel that gets that I ping when anyone is like putting together a draft, and then the people that respond, those are the people that we try to set up the draft with. And then the very few people that we have that are not employees, we'll just ping those people individually, which is, I mean, I'm thinking there's like one person actually just moved away. So it's down to 2 people that could even like be a part of this that are not employees currently. So we do it it's just internally. It literally is just, let me see if I can pull it up. It is literally called Cube Drafts. It's just called Cube Drafts.
Nice. I wonder if anybody organizes their Cube Drafts on Slack.
Has to be.
Yeah, there's got to be somebody out there. Yeah, add us on Twitter if you have a Cube Slack. If you don't know Slack, it's a communications app that's usually used for work and just organize things. I think there was a big one for judges. Maybe that still exists. I was a part of it, so that's why I would have no idea. I just But I have Slack for several work things, but it's pretty good for organizing people and things.
Yeah, I think that Microsoft Teams is the Microsoft-ified version, essentially. So I have to imagine that there's some internal, especially if you work at a place that either has a lot of people or is a lot more young or game oriented, I'm sure there are some sort of other internal servers professionally that are meant to put cube drafts together. So I'm happy to hear those.
Yeah, definitely. Or you can do the old fashioned, actually make phone calls.
Yeah, I haven't made a phone call for that purpose in a while. Now, a text message I'll do. I will say that if it is something that is, well, this was, again, pretty specific, but when I was testing the SCG Cube, I organized that through email, but that was me talking to everyone and no one emailing back. So, and that was more of I'm delivering information, like, here is, because, basically just to have like here's where the next draft is, here's the people that are drafting, here are the changes that happened in the cube. So that was a little special, but I mean, I definitely am more old school. I would email if we didn't have Microsoft Teams. That's how I would probably organize it.
Yeah, my drafts these days are a little bit more intimate. Yeah, maybe getting one, sometimes 3 other people together for a 2-bert or a 4-bert. And it'll be like, I got a fresh batch of beer that's ready to go. You want to come over, have some dinner, play some games. So real easy to get one person.
Yeah.
Tougher to get 7.
Yeah, it often is. Yeah, those are the special days where we can get 8. I mean, it's nice because it's just, there's so much going on for getting 8 people together for any particular thing is an act of God, essentially.
Yeah, it's not so much just that is more people, it's that you want that specific number. So you're keeping a little close to the chest with the invites, because it's like, I need to get exactly 7, and getting fewer is horrible, and getting more is really awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the frustrating thing is like after the first group of people, you have to, I mean, I don't know what another way to say it, you have to like rank people. Because you're reaching out to people in a specific order.
Yeah,
it's just true.
Whether you are literally ranking them or just messaging them in an order, like that's what I mean. There is a score being kept, regardless of how deliberate that is. That's actually kind of a nice thing. I don't know off the top of my head how many people are in my Cube Draft chat, but it's certainly well more than 8. And a lot of them are people that are around that say, okay, well, if you have 7, I can be the 8th. And it's nice to have a number of friends like that are, it's not super my thing or I'm not in the mood. However, I understand that it sucks to have 7 and I will happily be the 8th for you.
And I guess just to clarify, because I'm sure this will get taken out of context, you don't necessarily have to rank people, but basically like rank them from availability. Like if you have person A, B, and C, and person C is frequently busy on Saturdays when you generally draft, you're probably going to reach out to that person last because it's less likely that they might be available, or there's other factors. Although I'm sure some people do rank people like, I don't want to draft with this person, so if I have to, I'll reach out to them. But I more meant like based on like constraining factors of the people's lives. This is generally how I try to think about it.
Way to save face.
Yeah, well, that's not going to be what's clipped and remembered, so it doesn't matter. I know how this game works. Anyway, so once we, you have your people together. Something that people ask me for constantly is, where's your list? And that's not just the people that are drafting. This is people on Twitter and social media and everywhere. So I give them 2 things because as I've talked about on this podcast before, and as most people know, I love spreadsheets. When I first made my cube back 12 years ago, I made it in the very first one I made into a Microsoft Excel document, but quickly got changed to a Google Drive, like a Google Sheets document. And that document is still going, and I still have, that is where the purest, most accurate form of the cube is. Whenever I make any changes, whenever I have any thoughts or notes, it goes there. Now, because there are other people in the world that want to use newer technology, I've also updated my cube on Cube Cobra. Previously, I used Cube Tutor. They had some problems. I use Cube Cobra now. So, Ryan is a big fan of Cube Cobra. Generally puts a lot of the digital offering cubes on there. But I have my personal Google Sheets spreadsheet, which everyone can have access to. And then I also have it on Cube Cobra for people that want to, look at advanced metrics and draft it and all this other nonsense that's away from the baseline spreadsheet.
I will say that I don't really use any of those bonus features on Cube Cobra. I largely jumped from Cube Tutor to Cube Cobra because you mentioned there's some issues. Unfortunately, Cube Tutor is still up and running. The sets as they're released, they're way slower to get there. Cube Cobra actually kind of adds cards as they're previewed. You can actually already add cards from Innistrad Midnight Hunt, which is the one feature I really like about Cube Cobra. I don't really care about the analytics. Sometimes the organization actually irritates me, and I'm grumpy old man where I learned the Cube Tutor interface first, so I do have a preference for it, even if some people want to argue that it's worse. It's the one that's more familiar. I have more experience with it. I like the way it looks a little bit better. And also when I'm working on a project, I don't like having published. One thing about Cube Cobra is like people can follow you, which is cool. And it's supposed to have people engage in discussions, which I think is useful and very cool. Like a lot of people work on cubes together and you can build these friendships online. And it's nice to have the space for that. I don't like sharing my stuff till it's done. So I do a lot of the preliminary work for my cubes on Cube Tutor because nobody can see it. And I like that. But anyway, Cube Cobra definitely is a little bit more up to date. Certainly the more popular option these days.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let me tell you an option you may not have heard of that allows full customization. Okay, you could do whatever you want. You can organize it however you want. Okay, this is called Microsoft Excel. It's a very new piece of software. It's quite powerful. It is fully customizable. No one can see any of your work until you publish it. It's pretty great. I'd look into it. Might be, it's on the cutting edge of technology, but just want to put that out there for people that want to take the leap into the future.
My friend and co-SCG Baltimore Team Open champion Liz Lynn uses a website called Moxfield. I believe it's moxfield.com.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, Liz likes Moxfield because it displays all the cards kind of like you're looking at a deck building window. You see the full card. You can move them around that way. I don't really have any experience with that, so I can't really sing its praises or say anything I like or dislike about it. But I do know that that is one that some other people use.
People send me commander decks on that website frequently, and I would say I think I like it the most of any of those websites.
Okay.
But I store my commander decks in a different place. I can tell you about that if you're interested.
Yeah. Where do you build your commander decks?
It's this brand new
Is it Microsoft Excel?
It's Microsoft Excel, yes, actually. Anyway, yeah. I understand that I'm old school, and all these newfangled Moxfield tapped out architect, I don't know, whatever. Look, that's fine. All you kids can have all of your websites to show you your pictures. I like text, alphanumeric, can change the size of things. Look, I just want full customization. That's all I want. Okay. Just want how I want it.
Fair enough.
Anyway, so that's what I send people when people ask me where my lists are. I'll send them to. I'll send them both.
You know, my favorite thing actually about using the Cube list websites is that you cannot get on Microsoft Excel. When I add cards to it, I don't have to type the card's entire name.
That's true.
It auto-completes the card name for me.
Yeah, I will give you that. And I've certainly, the pitfall is every once in a while you misspell a word. It's not frequent, but every once in a while it does happen.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, look, I can't argue with that point. All right, we haven't even got to the physical cube yet. We're even talking about it in the digital form or the text form right now. Anything else before we get to the physical tangibleness?
Yeah, I guess the one thing, maybe it'll come up later, but it'll be a little bit better to attach this to where you keep your cube list. And some people might not keep a cube list. I know that some people, when they build a cube, if you're building a cube for the first time, for some, that's building a cube out of your collection. And for me, I will put a cube list together. I will then track those chords down and build a cube. It's going to be different. Certainly, if you are budget minded or just don't want to spend the money and you are just building from your collection, it's still good to get those cards on a list.
Yeah.
When you make changes later, you can keep track of that. And also, it is really helpful if a card gets misplaced, which is sometimes it happens. You're shuffling, you're dealing, and you realize, oh no, this is the wrong number. Having the list stored somewhere is how you're going to fix those discrepancies. Yeah,
and it happens. And sometimes it's just like, oh, it's in my lands, but you still, it's helpful. It's helpful to find that information because inevitably it'll come up.
Yep.
All right. Excellent note. Okay, we are going to take our first break, but rest assured, when we come back, there's plenty of cube peripherally goodness going on. We're going to take a quick break and be back in just a moment.
Listen up, gamers. I have some huge news. If you haven't heard, the SCG Tour Online is back, and we're giving away cash prizes, tens of thousands of MTG Arena gems, MTG Arena Qualifier Weekend invitations, MTG Arena Championship invitations, and the big one, Star City Games Invitational invitations. You heard that right. The Invitational is back, and that's going to be at SCG Con. SCG Con is back, taking place Halloween weekend. That's October 29th through the 31st in the Star City. That's Roanoke, Virginia, and you can qualify for the Star City Games Invitational via the SCG Tour Online. Stay tuned for more details on that. Those will be coming soon. And for more information on the SCG Tour Online, head over to scgtouronline.starcitygames.com. Now back to the pod.
So one of the big questions that Jason asked when, tweeting at us about all the logistics is the stuff that you have your cube in, sleeves, boxes, etc. So this is a big thing because it's really a thing that everyone really has to have. You have to have sleeves on your cube. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to say have to, but you probably want to have sleeves on your cube. And unless you are into having it non-sleeved in like a Ziploc bag, you probably want it in a box of some sort as well, right?
Yeah. Overwhelmingly, cubes are sleeved. There's non-zero that aren't, and there's some charm to that, but also it's something that makes a lot of Magic players' skin crawl.
Yeah. It would make mine. I would not feel comfortable. I'd feel like I was doing something wrong. It's not where you want to be. Anyway,
I like it because it feels like I'm doing something wrong. But regardless, I do sleeve my cubes.
Yeah. All right. So what's the big question then? What are you sleeving it in?
Yeah. So this actually is going to be an important thing to answer before we get into boxes, because it's not just type of sleeve. So I at least single sleeve all my cubes in black matte Dragon Shields. Dragon Shields, they just hold up really well. What I use for tournaments. Yeah, I mean, for tournaments, I tend to change just every tournament because that's just what you do when you don't want to get caught with marked cards. But for cubes, they hold up for a long time. They can get a little bit gunky, but they split less often than other sleeves, get bent in the corner less than a lot of other sleeves that I have used. And then whether you are going to single, double, I guess that there's got to be people that triple sleeve their cubes. I have not encountered them. I'm sure they exist.
Oh, yeah, the character garters.
Yeah, and
they definitely exist.
That's going to impact when we get into storage boxes. But generally, I single sleeve my cubes. I do have the Grixis Tubert double sleeved with perfect hards. I guess a little tangent on perfect fits. There's a big difference between perfect fits and perfect hards. Perfect hards are those thick plastic. I actually believe I have a friend that was looking for some. I believe this is one of those products that got really rare during the pandemic. So I'm not actually sure how much you can track these down right now, but they are so much easier to get into the outer sleeve because the perfect hard just stays on your card with that thick hard plastic. And some people use side loaders for that reason. And side loaders are horrible. They don't do what perfect fits are supposed to do. They just like don't protect your cards from humidity. They do protect you from like splitting sleeves and that sort of thing. Here in Minnesota, the summer months are very humid. So if you actually want to protect your cards from moisture, the double sleeving with the sleeves with the open ends facing each other and double sleeve that way, you just don't get the same humidity protection with side loaders. And side loaders also have caused me to bend a lot of cards and like destroy them, de-sleeving them as a store owner. I'm sure that's something that comes up at the SCG warehouse or at least buying at shows.
Yes. So side loaders and what we like to call the cheese wrapper sleeves. As Ryan, as you know, for people that buy Magic cards, those are big no-nos.
Mm-hmm.
We will shame any new employees that like to use anything but a standard perfect fit or a perfect fit hard. That's acceptable as well. But basically, that is in a different configuration than a normal sleeve, because as you are buying Magic cards from people, people have their cards in sleeves frequently and double sleeve frequently, and you get into a rhythm of unsleeving. And then if someone has side loaders in there, that becomes very difficult because it breaks apart your entire rhythm and consistency of de-sleeving stuff. And the cheese wrappers, which are the ones that fold over or in to fully protect the sleeve.
Ridiculous.
Those are to the point where we will ask the customer to do it. We will not even do it for you because it takes so long in the context of a full day to take your time out to do those.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel extremely strongly about those type of sleeves. And I can tell you right now, as long as I am responsible for the sales booth at Star City Games events, you will never, and I mean never, see any sleeve that does not load from the top/bottom.
Hell yeah.
It will never happen. It has never happened in the many years that I have been responsible for it. Those are, I was going to say they're great for the people that want them. They're actually not. I think that they shouldn't even exist. Ryan covered a couple of the reasons why. I don't know. Like, that's one that they got right on the first try. And then here's how I feel about it. Are you a fan of Oreo cookies, Ryan? Of course you are, because you're a human being.
Right.
Yeah. The original Oreo was perfect. It's basically the perfect cookie. However, double stuffed Oreos, pretty good. Some would argue they're better than regular Oreos. And you know what? I respect that opinion. I like the regular Oreos. Some people like the double stuffed. Here's the thing. They're both great. And that's what regular Perfect Fits and Perfect Fit Hards are. It's the regular Oreo and the double stuffed Oreo. Okay, don't mess with it. It does the exact function that you want it to do. And if you want a little bit extra, just go with the Perfect Fit Hard if you can find them.
Right. Also, I do got to say, the way that Perfect Fit Hards with an outer sleeve over them, the way that when you mash shuffle, the cards just cut through each other because you got that thickness in the middle. They shuffle like butter. I love shuffling them.
They do. I like that. I like them too. I think honestly, I have my entire collection in Perfect Fit sleeves. And this predated the existence of the Perfect Fit hard sleeves. And honestly, I think I'm really just unwilling to go and change them all to match.
A lot of work.
It is a lot. I mean, we're thousands of cards. Mm-hmm. Like anything that has any sort of value, or I would ever use it in a deck in any format, has a perfect fit. So, I'm just unwilling. I think if all my sleeves could be magically changed, I would change them to the perfect fit hearts. But they're not. Yeah. So you can't go wrong with either.
Yeah, that's fair. The amount of work there is ridiculous. But anyway, single sleeve your cards, double sleeve your cards. Don't use side loaders, but that's going to influence how large of a box you need. When it comes to also the number of cards in your cube, of course, is going to influence the size of a box you need.
Definitely. Wait, before we get to a box, I would like to endorse Dragon Shield Matte as well. That is also my preferred sleeve.
Yeah, they're just great.
Ryan literally hit all of the same reasons. They have the highest durability. They are going to both have the least indentions in them. They're going to break the least. They're going to get smushed corners the least. And something I've thought about, and I've said a lot, while it appears that Dragon Shields get dirty easier, it's because they last so fucking long that of course they're going to get dirty. Okay? They're going to get dirty because they last forever. They're like indestructible. If you don't care how your sleeves look, you could literally have a set of Dragon Shields on your cube for like a decade, and they would still shuffle fine. If you like wanted to clean the dirt off of them, you're not going to break them.
I have definitely played cubes that have had the same Dragon Shields on them for just years.
Yeah, they're just indestructible. And I think for tournaments, like, you could make a case for anything else. I love Dragon Shield personally. It's the only thing I have ever had my cube in. I'm on my 4th set from 12 years. I started with Dragon Shield Red, not matte. This is before the matte existed. Then changed to silver, and then the matte came out, and I got matte blue, and now I'm on matte purple. So
nice. Yeah, I used the old purples for a long time. Matte black. I got into matte black, I think, around the time of original Innistrad. It certainly had to do with playing double-faced cards in my deck and just knowing these are definitely opaque and they're a good product.
No question. Yeah.
You did remind me about another point about sleeves, though, so I'm glad we're still on this. Whether you like the sleeve that Justin and I do, or you have your own brand, I know that a lot of people, budget-minded, you might get some kind of sleeves on clearance, or the store you go to is discontinuing. They have a lot. You can get them for cheap. That's great in the short term, and if the price is right, certainly do that. But you do want to be mindful that someday, especially with cheaper sleeves, you're going to need to re-sleeve your cube. And so you do want to have a line on getting more of those sleeves. And that's just another thing. Like, I don't really expect Dragon Shields to go out of business anytime soon.
They will not.
I can still get those, which is great. And you do just kind of want to have some extra sleeves on you when you're cubing, because some of them do split. It does happen.
Yeah. Or they just get marked in other ways.
Yep.
They didn't have to split to have to, like, you know, if there's a chunk, something gets indented for whatever reason, you know, that's one you're going to want to replace. I think a good rule of thumb is to basically just have like 10 when you buy your sleeves, if you have about 10% extra, you're going to be in pretty good shape. If you have a 360 card cube, if you get 400 sleeves for your cube and then however many for your lands, which we'll get to, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. 540 if you get 600, etc.
Yeah.
So,
that should last you until resleeving time anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
But then boxes, there's a lot of different sizes you can need for a box. So I've been doing a lot more Tuberts, the 180 card cubes, and those fit with basic lands. You can even get a little bit more in the box, but usually the single sleeve 180 cards basic lands will fit in a BCW 400 card count, just cardboard box. And they're not pretty, but if you're not roughing them up too much, they will transport your cards, and they are just dirt cheap. Very easy to get your hands on a number of different sizes of those BCW, just white cardboard boxes. The 800 counts would fit like a double sleeve 360 or a 540 pretty easily. The size, the number of the cards on those is a little bit weird because they are sports card sizes, which are a little bit thicker than Magic cards. So you can fit more Magic cards than the number on the box, but the ballpark is kind of like it gets you close anyway.
Well, a good way to look at it is if it's sleeved, it's actually pretty close.
Yeah.
Unsleeved, it's a lot more, but sleeved, it's actually pretty close to that number. Single sleeve, it's pretty close to that number.
Right. Yep. And then size box that I really use. This is not something you can necessarily track down. I guess you could, but you'd be spending too much on it. But back when they did regional pre-releases, I just have some set themed. I still have the 800 card, the long box I got from 4-0ing my Rise of the Eldrazi sealed deck pre-release.
Nice.
And those are pretty cool because there's some history to them. The Spooky Cube is in a box that was gifted to me from a friend, which is the same kind of just long box from, God, is it Legends? They made a bunch of the long boxes from way back in early Magic.
I'm gonna look. I actually have all of them. Moving my mic, so I apologize. Yes, they have 5 of them. I actually had my cubes in these, like cube, and then extra sleeves and tokens and lands in these, and they're solid colored. The color is basically the old border, what the old border looked like, and then it's just like basically like little squares of art from cards from like 1995 and earlier.
And those are just incredibly cool boxes.
Yeah, they're very cool. Some of them are looking their age. Maybe not quite. They're actually holding up pretty good for being, now that I think about it, 25 plus years old. And there's also one that has, I think, King Cheetah on it that that opens and closes from the top, which is around when Visions came out. And that one's also very cool. That was the material they use is a little bit better for that one. But I actually literally have all those and have had my cubes in those. That was actually the first thing I ever put my cube in when I made it initially. Nice.
Yeah, that Rise of the Eldrazi long box was the first for me. And then this was too small for the 8-player cubes, but I also have a box from it was a Mirrodin Besiege pre-release where it's an invertible box where it either says "We will endure" for the Phyrexian side, for the Mirrodin side.
Yeah.
And I believe it says all will be one for the Phyrexian side.
Yes.
Yeah, they ran like a weird promotion where your packs could either be Mirrodin Pure or New Phyrexia, which was like kind of a wild thing. Those packs are I saw some selling for like some obscene amount, and I felt a little bit bad about the fact that we played Emperor Seal deck with them at the time. But you know what? I wouldn't have traded that night for anything then. So
yeah, they're quite pricey. They're definitely pricey.
That box is kind of small, but it fits a 2-bird anyway.
The cards you can get out of the Phyrexian side is one of the highest value like EV packs printed in the last decade.
That sounds
actually
right.
really ridiculous. Yeah, it's like the worst card. The worst card you're going to get is like Phyrexian Crusader.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I've gone through so many boxes for my cube. I went through the like we talked about, the 1995 long boxes with the art, only because they were so cool, and they're like laminated. They're like legitimately laminated. Mm-hmm. It's like laminated cardboard is what they're all made out of. So they lasted okay, but they fit really well because it's just this really thin long box. When the archive came out, I tried that for a little bit. It was a little too chunky to take around the Ultimate Guard archive 400 plus. Yes. Yes, I tried that for a little while, and that was okay. Prior to that, I was purchased and gifted around the same time when Wizards or Ultra Pro rather, came out with the actual Cube box, which is the 9-sided box with like the Magic Online art for the Moxen on it.
Okay, yeah.
I have 2 of those. If you do not leave your house to play your cube ever, those are very cool. If you ever leave your home, they're horrible.
Yeah, I've played a cube out of one of those, and they look pretty cool on the mantle. They're just really awkward to carry.
Yeah, it's the worst shape. Theoretically, I mean, they're like, it's a cube. If you have your cube and you're like, literally, you invite your friends over to your house, and that is where your cube, and that's the only place your cube lives, I say get one of those, because it's like, from a look perspective, they are super cool. And if you're not going to be moving around, you're never going to beat it up. So, you know, it's fine. But if you have to move it anywhere, literally, if you take it to your car, you're going to be like, this is the worst idea ever. So I've had that. I put that because someone gave it to me, and I got one just to have as like to display. But then someone gave me one. I was like, I'll put my cube in this for a while, and I carried it to like 2 places, and I was like, it was really nice, but I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. It's affecting me mentally every time I have to move it out of my room.
I take psychic damage from this box.
Yeah, exactly. So I have now had my cube in the same box since 2018, and this is what I currently have, and I can comfortably say this is my actual factual recommendation. So in 2018, I was at Grand Prix Atlanta, and one of the booths was partnering with Dex Protection for a new line of products that was coming out. And I don't even think they had like officially like named them yet. And they had different sizes, and one of the big ones, and it was literally the prototype version. And they were it was the booth that we were right across from. We were vending the event, and I talked to them on like Friday morning, and they were like, yeah, they had like one guy that was from Dex Protection at their booth. And there was like, yeah, we're making all these new, and we're getting like feedback. So ultimately, at the end of the weekend, I was like, I'll buy this. And he's like, I can't sell it to you unless I get rid of everything else. And I was like, if you have that one, if that's the last one, which was their prototype, literally like one of the first ones they had made of what this box is, I was like, he'll sell it to me. And at the end of the weekend, he did. So I bought it. And ultimately what it has gone on to become is the Dex Protection Supreme Game Chest. And just even with the prototype version, which some of the materials are slightly worse than it is now, because I've recommended this to other friends, they've got it, and they're actually nicer than the one I have.
this is, in my opinion, the perfect cube box. It is incredibly thin. It is barely bigger than the size of a Magic card if you put it on its side, like just barely. It has 4 different sections, a huge long section at the bottom, a smaller section at the top, and then 2 little trays that you can pull out that you could put dice or tokens in. And the best thing about this is, one, it's leather. It's like, leather, faux leather material on the outside, which is incredibly durable, but it has, honest to God, the strongest Velcro I've ever encountered in my entire life. To the point where it is almost annoying. But let me tell you, you could literally, and I'm not exaggerating, you could put your cube in this and you could throw it off the roof of your house. It would not open. This Velcro is insane.
A friend of mine, his cube is currently in shambles, but he owns the cards for a foiled out vintage cube.
Yeah.
And it was in one of those Dex Army boxes. I don't know if it's the one. I don't believe it's the same exact model you have, but it's like a 2-row Dex protection brand, and it's got that Velcro. And I can't resist peeling that Velcro, dude. It is so funny to me. It is so loud.
Oh, it's incredibly loud. If you're at a game store and you open it, everyone will hear it.
Yeah, that's actually how you can organize your cube nights, is you show up to the game store and
the Velcro is outrageously strong. And that was the thing that sold me on it. Is like this will never ever come apart no matter where you carry it. So this is what I have. This is what I have my cube in now. I will probably buy another one just because some of the interior is coming apart. But again, that's not because of the quality. It's just because this one is literally like a prototype one that I've had and still had for 3 years, and it's held up insanely well.
Nice.
It is. We don't sell it at Star City Games. It's hashtag not sponsored. You can't even buy it on our website. But that's the thing that I have. It's great. It's exceptional. I recommend it to every person, even if it's not that exact size. Their line is just about the best thing that you can get for cubes, depending on the size of your cube.
Yeah, I have no such box recommendations outside of playing the Shadow or the Rise of the Eldrazi pre-release and 4-0ing your sealed pod and getting a free box. If any box manufacturers want to sponsor the podcast, you might be able to buy my endorsement. But Justin did have one to give. There's a number of different brands that do various side cube boxes. The big thing is to just know the volume of cards, basic lands, plus your cards, single sleeve, double sleeved, how much space you have to fill, get that physically together, measure it, that sort of thing. So you actually know what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And really it's going to come down to the size of your cube or cubes that you're trying to fit into there. And that, makes all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely options at pretty much any size.
Too big is better than too small.
Yeah. You can always use, all those sleeves that you just bought for your cube. They're going to come in. Especially if it's Dragon Shield, they're going to come in those little cardboard boxes. Boom, spacer box. Fill up the rest of the space.
Not uncommon for me to have a open Dragon Shield box on one side of my cube boxes with my cube. And there's a number of other peripheral stuff we'll get to in a little bit too.
Okay, so one more, I guess, before we kind of move on. This was something that Jason Conart had suggested. He talked about CubeMajigs. CubeMajigs is it's a brand, first of all, but they're little boxes that essentially will fit among other things, but 15 sleeved Magic cards, which make up, of course, a pack if you are cubing. Now, I do not own these. I have not bought them to use myself, but I have played them on a friend's cube. And I think that there's some pluses and minuses to these, but ultimately I will say that they are not for me, because the big minus is this is another step that I have to take, regardless of the upside, that slows my ability to cube down. That's basically what throws it out for me.
We talked about this a little bit before the podcast, so I knew you were going to say that. I didn't say the other consideration then, so I'll deliver this for the listeners.
I love it.
If you own a cube and, like me, really hate waiting, but also can't really do anything purposeful when you're waiting, CubeMajigs seem like a great way to get the cube ready to go and transport it. I think some people like them because you get that kind of visceral feeling, like tearing open the CubeMajig. You're actually opening a booster. But if I was to get into them, I imagine it would be so that I could transport packs ready to go, use a little bit more of my time when I'm waiting, and so we can just cube as soon as I show up.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think that's one of the big things. It's like, one, you get the experience. Because sometimes with the cube, you're just like, there's 15 cards in front of me. This is not a pack. It is a pack, but man, to some people, especially that are that love playing limited, opening that pack is an experience in itself. Mm-hmm. Another bonus thing is CubeMajigs is one of the only surefire ways to prevent the accidental pack grab. And I think most of you know what I'm talking about. It's when someone that's not you, that's not listening to this podcast, but one of your friends, you know who I'm talking about. In the middle of pack 2, you pass and you're like, man, I haven't seen this pack before. And then towards the end of pack 2, someone's like, uh-oh, I think I grabbed my pack 3 and passed it. And then you have 7 packs for pack 3, and you had 9 packs in pack 2. Well, CubeMajig is going to stop that. Because someone would have to specifically open it and pass it from there. I always encourage people to put something like their phone or a token or something over that so that doesn't happen. You're always going to have that friend who's not going to do it because I won't do it. And then they're going to be the person that's going to do it 100% of the time.
The other thing about CubeMajigs, I see them mentioned on Twitter. I do not own them, haven't interacted with the product, but I have seen pictures, and I like some of the art that they do on the CubeMajigs, and they come in these cool little boxes, which look from the pictures like there may be about 400 card boxes. In theory, that's a box that could fit a tuber with basic lands. I don't know. They would have to send me one for me to do any detective work and officially endorse it. But the boxes do look cool anyway.
Oh yeah, very much. And they're nice material. I've interacted with them. They're nice. It's, I think if you are a cube draft for you is an experience. Meaning, like, this is a thing that doesn't happen very often, and I'm really trying to make it special for everyone. I think CubeMajigs serve that purpose excellently, because then the time between you and cubing is not necessarily wasted, especially if you're prepping everything ahead of time and people are coming over and you have everything laid out. And that's really cool when you walk up to a table and everything is laid out in actual packs. That's a really great experience for your friends, your drafters, the people that are playing with your cube.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting down and you're doing everything all together and people are like building the packs, it is an extra step to put the cards in the packs and take them right back out 2 minutes later.
If you are hosting and you want to have everything set up and you have cats, I have never been a cat person, but I've been around enough cats to know that they fuck up everything. If you leave stuff on a table, they'll knock it around. So CubeMajigs will stop your cards from being destroyed in that context.
That's another good point. Didn't think about the cat factor. I mean, I feel like this is kind of one of those things that if you see it, you maybe you know it if you want it. But I guess that's kind of what we're here to do, to provide guidance on that. So I will just say that they're not for me. And but I'm also never upset if someone has their cube in them.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't ruin my day to encounter the product, though I do not have any experience with it outside of seeing the advertising for them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else that you could put your cube in for us to talk about?
I think that it is important to have a nice, sturdy, transportable box. That was a good note on that cube-shaped box. Like, don't don't get conned into buying something that's stupid to carry with the intention of carrying it. But mostly you'll find relatively sturdy rectangular boxes. And I do like just the BCW boxes because they're like $1 or $2 and you just beat them to shit. And most game stores are going to have those on hand.
Another benefit for those, you got a specialty cube, you can put some sweet art on it.
Yeah, you can draw on it. You could get some custom stickers made, put the stickers on the box.
Yeah. You could have a Hall of Fame on the box. As someone wins a draft, they put their name on it.
Ooh, that does rule.
Yeah. Yeah, so the box is the trophy. There you go. Okay. We got another quick break coming up, so we're going to run these ads and be back in just a moment.
Hello there from Dominario's Judgment, a weekly podcast for Star City Games with me, Dom Harvey.
And me, Ari Lex.
Where we bring you the latest, greatest, and downright weirdest things Modern has to offer.
Want to know what to expect for next weekend's events? We've got you covered.
Do you want deep breakdowns of the hot topics and decks in Modern? We've got you covered.
Just want to make sure you don't miss the latest nonsense before your opponents teach you a lesson about it in the queues? Oh yeah, we have definitely got you covered.
And when Modern Horizons 2 blows the ceiling off this format, as it surely will, we'll be here with you to pick up the pieces.
Find us every week on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Or if you want to head over to StarCityGames.com, we'll be right there alongside all the great content from all your other favorite content producers.
All right, Ryan, so we're 2 steps in. We've contacted everyone. We have contacted everybody on Slack. We've put our cubes and our side loaders into $2 Ultra Pro sleeves and put them in a plastic bag. And now we've come to the table and we are ready to cube, except for one thing. We didn't shuffle because because we put our cube and all that stuff I talked about a second ago.
If your cube is in the plastic bag, you might be all set.
It might be partially shuffled.
But if you put it in a box like a regular human being, you do got to do some shuffling from here.
Okay. So this is a big one, right? Because no matter what we've set up until this point, you might have your own system, but everyone's got to shuffle. Everyone's got to shuffle the cube. I don't mean everyone has to shuffle the cube, but every cube owner has to have their cube shuffled in some form or fashion or randomized in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this was actually a big part of Jason's question for the podcast. Had to do with you mentioning that you do not let other people shuffle your cube, which I think is super reasonable. But let's really get into it because shuffling a cube is a lot different than shuffling a deck.
Yes. So the times that I allow people to shuffle the cube is when it is a time sensitive thing. And usually when that has happened, I'm barking out directions, which makes it an unpleasant experience for generally at least some amount of the 7 other people. So I don't like to do that.
But that's fine for you, right? You like that experience?
You know what? They don't like it in the moment, but they appreciate it when we get to the draft. Because, ever since I started doing that, which has been a long time now, what I don't hear? Oh, did this get shuffled? This looks like someone's deck. Blah, blah, blah. There's 8 white cards in this pack. You know what? We don't hear that if I'm telling everyone how to shuffle and they're listening. But that is the reason that I don't like telling people that I don't like letting people shuffle, is because it kind of just, I don't believe that other people, especially non-cube owners, and I hate to say this, but they don't put as much effort into shuffling because it feels like a chore to them rather than a part of the experience.
Well, even outside of that, like if you just haven't really thought about it and have it broken down, you're likely to shuffle it like a deck, the thing that you shuffle.
Yeah, you grab 60 to 100 cards and you just shuffle that for 5 minutes, which does approximately nothing after the first 30 to 40 seconds. So, yes, it is true. If it was up to me, I would not have anyone shuffle. And frequently, I will actually shuffle the cube in isolation ahead of time before the draft. I will sit down before anyone else. What I do is I take the entirety of the cube out of the box, and then I I pile sort it into 8 face-up stacks, and this serves 2 purposes. One, I like looking at the cube. Okay, that's purpose number 1. 2, this is the first step of sorting, and it allows me to count the cube. Basically, I know that depending on where I land that last card, how many I am short. Unless I am short by exactly 8, then that would be slightly unfortunate. But in any other scenario, I'm going to know how many cards the cube is, which should be the number that I've predetermined. So then once we have that, I essentially split those piles into 2, 3, or 4 piles each. Depends on the size of the cube, of course. And then I will take those and then mix those in and do quick shuffles with each of those piles to make again until I get to another 8 piles, and then I will do that again. And then generally, I will turn the cards over, and then once they're actually shuffled, when we're getting to the making of packs, then everyone can kind of get in, shuffle a little bit, and start making the packs. If I'm doing it myself, I'll turn them over after the first one, so I can't see anything, shuffle them up a little bit kind of collectively, and then start making packs. When I make packs, I like to grab basically 5 cards at a time from different piles. So I'll take 5 from this stack, 5 from this stack, 5 from this stack. This is a pack, set that aside, and then I'll do that again collectively. And sometimes I'll shuffle in between that too. Basically, it allows me to count the cube. It allows me to shuffle it in multiple different ways, and then finally allows me to randomize it without me being able to see anything, and create the packs, which of course is the last part of the process.
That is a good methodology. Pile shuffling a cube, from my perspective, I imagine that's approximately what happens in Purgatory. When you're waiting eternity, you can look at the cube, but you have to pile shuffle it and you can't play it. That's like a form of torture for me. But if you got to count your cube, that is a nice thing. You do run into a counting issue later in setup, but I like cubes where you draft all the cards and you find out when you're dealing out the packs if you're one short, and then you got to panic. But that's solvable. As in my extra stuff, I usually have some cards recently cut from the cube, or if I have a card I'm considering, so I can just sleeve something up. I think it's only ever happened to me twice where I was dealing the cube and I had the wrong number. It does happen, but pretty rare.
That is also a benefit of doing it ahead of time, is you can address those issues. If it's like immediately before the draft, I will. I mean, for me, my cube is usually bigger than the number of people drafting, so it doesn't matter. But I'll note it and be like, okay, I gotta look for one card after this draft.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the counting is definitely good. My shuffling methodology is different. I'll get into that, but I'll start. My note on shuffling is when you shuffle the cube before you draft, treat it as if it's sorted. That's going to make more sense when I get into this, because when I take a cube and sort it, which usually when you build a cube, get the card together for the first time, verifying you have all the cards involves sorting it. At least it's the easiest way to make sure you have all the cards. You take it from sorted, you have your piles that are color sorted, and you just want to grab a little bit from every pile. You want to shuffle the sections independently. So shuffle all your white cards, set them down, shuffle all your blue cards, just a little bit, a couple mashes, a couple riffles. Doesn't have to be too thorough. And then I grab a little bit from Wooburg, one of every, a little like 10-ish cards at a time from every monocolor stack. You're trying to get up to a number of cards that are still comfortable to shuffle. And then I'll mix up the artifacts, the lands, and the multicolor in a similar fashion. And then start shuffling the stacks together from my mashups from the other stacks. And the cube actually gets randomized pretty quickly doing this. And the important thing isn't the amount of time you spend mashing or riffling. It's the amount of time you spend grabbing from other piles. The shuffles are less important than cutting the deck, cutting the stack. You need to be grabbing cards from different sections. I actually had kind of an aha moment when I was plating my dinner tonight. I was serving up some mashed potatoes. That's one of my favorite foods for anyone that cares. But there was like a section of butter, like there's like a little pool of melted butter in the mashed potatoes. And the idea of the butter is that you want that evenly distributed in the potatoes. Like there's an amount of butter that's reasonable to eat. There's an amount that's unreasonable, which is why there's a pool of butter there. It's not really a problem, but it's not ideal. That's not the flavor profile that I want. So I could stir it in a little until it dissolves around in the pocket around it. But then I still have a pocket of butter. You got to stir the whole fucking pot. Okay. When you shuffle the cube, you have to shuffle the whole cube together. And so it's just like, if you're stirring the whole pot, you are shuffling together the sections. You got to keep making those cuts, give a couple riffles from different sections of the cube so that every section is touching every other section. Yep. If you sit there and just shuffle 60 cards for minutes, then you still have a pocket of butter. It just looks better.
Yep, that's a good way to put it. You made that the analogy much better than me, but I'll agree with Ryan. Do it his way.
You can pile shuffle
the butter analogy.
You can pile shuffle the cube if you want, but man, how long does it take you to pile shuffle your 540 card cube?
I'm pretty fast at it.
I believe that.
Yeah,
the question stands.
I'm pretty fast. To pile shuffle it, 7 or 8 minutes.
Okay, that's not actually so bad.
Yeah, I'm fast. Like I will literally grab a stack and then to lay out 8 cards because I'll do it two-handed. It takes me. I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, which takes me about 3 to 4 seconds for all 8 cards because I'll do it. With each hand. So usually in like a block of 4. So left hand will do the block of 4 on the left. Right hand will do block of 4 on the right.
Got it. But for a mere mortal, it probably takes at least twice as long.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably about 15. I'd imagine. Yeah. I mean, my piles get sloppy. I'll say that, but ultimately that doesn't matter. They're never getting there with 8 of them. They're never getting too big, or they're gonna fall over. Yeah, and then after I do that, then I'll clean them up, and then I will cut them into usually 3, and then I'll grab 1, 2, 3, 1, and then 2 from a different stack, and then do that until I have 8 again. Shuffle them again. Yeah, so pretty much what I agree with Ryan, and I do a similar thing. The cutting is more important than the shuffling.
Yeah, that's the big note.
Yeah, which is it's not backwards for when you think about it logically, but it's backwards mechanically for a Magic player because we have decks and you shuffle that deck, and as long as you shuffle it for X amount of time, you can continue to shuffle afterwards. It's not going to really hurt it, but that's just what you do. Is you're like, okay, I need to shuffle this deck for X, whatever X time is. In Cube, it's more about creating the randomization across the entire cube than randomizing a certain stack, which by the nature of it, it's already pretty random once you do that once or twice, but you have to continue to do that over the entire cube.
Yeah, and I imagine that when you are calling the shots, when you have a group shuffling, a big thing that you're probably telling people to do is to pass some amount of the cards they're shuffling.
Yep. Switch half of those. Usually it's easier for people rather than do it in thirds when people are helping. I will just get them to cut the pile and then pass it to another person they have not done so yet.
Yep.
I'll be like, are you two switch? Okay, you two switch. And then they know that means take half of what you have and then trade it with half of what someone else has.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what direction the piles go. It just matters, again, that you are moving the piles a lot.
Yep. So some people get tired of that and they're like, well, you don't need to tell me how to shuffle. And I'll be like, well, then don't shuffle. It's like, we can make this easy. Like, it's not personal, but this is how it needs to be done. You know what? I'm telling you, everyone that's listening, I sound like an asshole. But when we get to the draft, I'd never hear any of those snarky comments about too many cards, the same color being in the same pack, or this looks like somebody's deck, or any of that nonsense. Okay.
Speaking of sounding like an asshole, I had a funny interaction a couple weeks ago where I was playing a 1v1 cube. We were doing some shuffling, and a third friend just kind of started shuffling some of the cards from the cube, and I was just like, "Why are you doing that?" He was like, "I just like shuffling," and it's like, well, I mean, we kind of need, I have some basic lands in the box if you want to shuffle those. Like it's like you're actually not helping at all. You're making this worse.
Yeah. So sometimes, a lot of times when it's so in short time, now that is a best case scenario. If it's like we need to cube. Okay, so let's say there's a different kind of shuffling that I will do. And this is called we're going to cube between the rounds of a PTQ shuffle. Which is a different process. That is let's get the cube out and everyone try to shuffle as much as they possibly can for 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes to do this because you got to get the draft. We have to get the draft in and then go back and play a round. And then we're going to play the matches over in between the next couple of rounds. So that is just basically making sure that is a more like semi cooperation. But that does require all hands on deck. And then when I see someone that's going to be playing the cube, but it's not shuffling, I will always make sure to ask them if their hands are injured. And oftentimes it is no. I would say around 100% of the time. And then when they say no, I'd say, okay, well then you need to shuffle because you're going to be cubing. And I don't always say it that nicely, but again, the job gets done, and that's really, someone's got to be the foreman out there, and I'm happy to take that role.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a meme on that when we're trying to get set up quicker, where one time I was going to cube with some people, and I was just kind of shuffling the cube, and one of my friends was just kind of staring into space, which happens in your downtime, whatever. And I just said, so do you think that this would go faster if one of us does it? Or if both of us do it? we repeat that one sometimes.
Yeah, shuffling, it's a testy thing. You know what? It's all for the greater good. That's kind of that's the point, right? To get to the cube. Mm-hmm. So before we get to that part, Ryan, do you have anything else on randomization?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. If you're going to contribute. The way you shuffle, the cuts are more important than riffling the same pockets.
All right. We're going to take our last break. And when we come back in just a moment, we're going to talk about all the extra stuff, which hopefully is going to answer every last one of your questions.
What's up, gamers? Taking a break from the pod here to talk to you about Star City Games Premium. Now, I know many of you are already Premium members. That's awesome. You're awesome. Thank you for that. If you are not already enrolled in SCG Premium, we need to talk. You are leaving a value on the table. For $7.99 a month, you get access to 5% off of Magic Sealed product, 10% off of all Magic singles, 15% off of supplies. Now, I know that I'm talking to a lot of Cube owners here. I know that you're going to buy more sleeves. You know you are going to save this money right back on sleeves alone. So that's reason enough for you to enroll. But I am not done yet, not by a long shot. You also get tons of exclusive content from a fantastic stable of writers. We're talking about Jerry Thompson, Paulo Vitor Rosa, Patrick Sullivan, Autumn Burchett, Brad Nelson, Sheldon Memory, Ross Merriam, Todd Anderson, Shaheen Sarani, Michael Majors, Ryan Sachs, Ari Lax, Dominic Harvey, Cedric Phillips. The list goes on and on. My stuff, you can get that every week for free. You're welcome. But now I am asking a favor. Go ahead, get enrolled for SCG Premium. Go to starcitygames.com/join-premium. Sign up today. And let's get back to the podcast.
All right. So we've got all the way to the draft. We've shuffled. We've drafted, because once you get to the draft, that's the easy part. But now we're done drafting. It's time to build decks and play the games. So we got a couple of questions to answer for logistics for this stage in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need a few more things. We need some basic lands for our cube. Do wonder, this is a topic that came up before. We'll get to it in a second, but the quantity of lands is something people want to know. I see you have here between 35 and 50, depending on cube size. I think you're going to be looking more towards 50 if you actually intend on drafting with more than 8 players, or if your cube actually just does not have that many non-basic lands.
Yep.
Because that does cut down the number of basics you need. 35 it's like a lot. And it can be a little irritating to fit them in the box, but that's a very safe number to have. You're usually golden with 35.
That's two decks, two monocolored decks.
Yeah, two monocolored decks and one left over.
Yeah,
and then
for that person that's splashing,
right. People ask me a lot, how many basic lands do I need for a Tubert? And you are safe with 20 of each, in my experience. And when you are heavy on non-basic lands, specifically the Tempo Tubert that has fetches and then shock lands as fetchable duels, the decks play a lot of non-basics. I actually only have 15 of each in that box, and that has not been a problem. But the number of non-basics impacts it. Safe number for a Tubert, 20, 25, you won't have any problems. And then for an 8-player cube, 35, 50 if you really want to never have an issue.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. It's definitely dependent on how many non-basics you have and or how much multicolor kind of support that you're encouraging. If it's a lot of one color, two color decks, then you're going to want more basics because those are going to get used more frequently. The goal is essentially never have to run out. I have, for my 540 card cube, which does have a lot of non-basic lands, I have 40 of each. And there's definitely been times that I've gotten close so far in the drafts that I've done with this version of the cube. But we have not exceeded it. I think we had four planes left over at one point. That was the closest we got to reaching that. So,
Also, sometimes you run into a specific issue with the best or like most splashable color in your cube. In Spooky Cube, I had, I think, 30 or 35 of each basic land, but I had to keep upping the number of swamps because people would splash black in a lot of decks and other people would be more committed to black. So I would run out of swamps.
Yeah. Did you change the number of just swamps? Or did you keep it even?
Just change the number of swamps.
Okay.
Nothing that needs to be symmetrical by any means.
No, when it comes to the games, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not like it's never going to be symmetrical. You're never going to have exactly 10 of each land being used or 20 of each land being used. So yeah,
I do like the idea of having just like basics in the box, like first come, first serve. Get your swamps.
Yeah. Are you someone that likes to have the basic lands sorted or shuffled together, fully randomized?
Shuffle together, and here's why.
Yep.
There's a lot of space in a table that seats 8 people, and you want to be able to pass a stack of basic lands down to one side of the table and keep some on your end, and have people on both ends be able to grab a stack and find the basics that they want. Sorted is fine. I know some people that actually just have a separate land box. They use like a bundle box, and maybe they have some fancy dividers and plains, island, the rest, and you can find them. Only one person can really get their lands at a time, or 2 if they're if it's logistically sitting in the right spot on the table. That's fine. I don't really like the extra box. I like the ease of passing a stack down to one side of the table.
I have recently, more so on accident, had mine sorted for the first time in a long time. And by that, I mean someone nicely sorted them for me because they noticed they were not sorted. And then that happened again for a second draft. So I can confirm, after having done this quite recently, of having them sorted, I am fully on the non-sorted and having them all shuffled together. Just being able to grab a stack and just hand it to a team or one side of the table just makes it so much easier. Does that mean you have to go back and be like, hey, do you have 2 islands over there? Sure. But
yeah, that's another one, depending on how competitive your group is. And if you're playing, it's pretty common when people do an 8-person draft, you break into teams and you play kind of 4v4 and you play against the people on the other team. And if you're trying to treat it like a competitive endeavor, if you really like tournament magic, then it's not uncommon to go to a different table and build your decks, where it's very beneficial to just grab a stack of basics to do that.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. It's just so much easier. I definitely got to look the last time that I that drafted when it was previously sorted, because again, the previous draft, someone had sorted it for me. I literally just took them all, and after people had made their decks and just started shuffling basics together. and someone thought that I had accidentally picked up the basics rather than my deck to shuffle, and like try to stop me, like they were concerned that I was making a huge mistake. I'm like, yeah, that's basically what happened. They're like, no, those are basics, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm doing this on purpose. So yeah, that's fun. So moving on from any other thoughts on basics, I guess, before the next thing.
I think I spent less time thinking about basics than a lot of other people, but some of that, it's a little store owner privilege. I'm usually drafting where I can get more basics, but I think the numbers that we run over should cover most people.
Yeah. I agree. So I think that, and I feel like this comes up frequently, tokens are always more important than I want them to be. Cubes in most, just pretty much every cube, have a lot of different tokens.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's necessary to have a lot of different tokens, but I think it is necessary to have a lot of different looking things that can represent tokens.
Yeah.
Because what you don't want is you don't want to have an insect or a plant token, and then you also don't want to have a beast token, and they're represented by the same card-like object.
So this is something that I actually think gets more important the lower power the cube level is. And specifically, it's actually more the combat with the assorted tokens in your cube matters. Because even a vintage cube is going to make a fair amount of tokens. And a friend I mentioned before with the Dex box that had the foil vintage cube, he just keeps a lot of the unglued tokens, which he haven't seen these before. It's just kind of their full art tokens. There's no power or toughness on them. There's a Pegasus, a Goblin. I'm blanking, but there's a couple of green ones. Whatever.
Pegasus, Goblin, Zombie, Squirrel. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a sheep, but
there is a sheep.
It's like not that difficult to really tell what's going on. And like in a vintage cube, if you draft mono white, you might need a 2/2 Knight Ally for your Gideon Zendikar, and a 1/1 Flying Spirit for your Lingering Souls, a 1/1 Lifelink Vampire for your Legion's Landing. And it doesn't really matter because there's not like a lot of blocking going on, and you might just die to some combo, or your opponent just like takes the damage and loses. Cube where I did have a serious issue keeping up with the game is when I was working on the Peasant Tubert. When the card list was a little bit rough, I didn't have any tokens in the box, and I was playing against my friend, and we both just had these wide battlefields. And it was like 1/1 flyers, 1/1s on the ground. Some of the tokens were 2/2s, and at one point we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, "This sucks." And like, the gameplay is like a little bit tedious, but there's still like some cards in the cube that can break through and end a game like that. And you can still have advantageous and interesting combats. But just the fact that it mattered the size and the abilities on the tokens, but there was no way to indicate that. So I think for like Pauper and Peasant, it actually becomes really beneficial to have specific tokens.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would get in the habit of, once you get back to being at an LGS and drafting, people leave tokens on the table all the time. Like, I just got in the habit of just like picking up tokens and just having them. That way it's like, oh, let me see if I have this. And sometimes you do. If you're in the situation where you don't have those tokens, anything that just represents like a card, even if it's like different color sleeves, like if you just have like turned around Magic cards and like different color sleeves that you can just represent, like, the blue sleeves are my 2/2 knights, the red sleeves are my 1/1 soldiers. So you can at least have some sort of differentiation on the battlefield, even if they're not the actual tokens, because like, I mean, you could make a brand new cube and then you're like, there's literally 60 different tokens in here. Like, that's a lot of different unique tokens to have. And it is. And that's like a whole nother set of cards you need to get. And if you don't want to have to do that, or if you're wanting to piece it together over time, just have some of those generic tokens. Something like Ryan said, something that doesn't have specific power and toughness, or even something that's just, blank, but is a card size so you can tap it. I think that's really important.
If it just gets enough of the properties right where the differences don't matter. If your cube makes a few different 2/2s with no evasion and there's nothing in the cube that makes the color matter, you can use a bear as a zombie or the other way around, or a wolf. If it says 2/2, that's probably fine.
Yeah. Yep. So here's the thing we've not talked about, but while we're on the topic of tokens, let me tell you a pet peeve of mine, Ryan, and that is when people, by force of having to do this or by doing it by choice, use dice as tokens. I am a big. I'll say I'm a big advocate of using card-shaped objects for tokens.
It's really easy to lose track of the existence of dice as meaningful permanence on the battlefield.
Or if you have a convoluted turn, is that tapped, untapped? How many of them are tapped? How many of them are untapped?
Mm-hmm.
But that being said,
or when you make so many of your dice token that you need to use a different die to indicate how many of the die tokens there are.
Yeah. It's just, I just don't want to go down that road. But dice outside of tokens, often quite useful in a cube setting.
Yeah, you do need dice. I was actually going to ask before we get into that, what's your thoughts on using a face down just sideboard card as a token? That's actually usually the most common way I represent tokens.
I think that's fine if you have one type of token on the battlefield.
Yeah, I keep them separated if I have to make different types, but the more combat matters, the more different kinds you make, the less tenable that solution is.
I think honestly, like, especially if you're using specific sideboard cards, once you go beyond like one, I'm out on it, and I'd rather use something else.
It used to be a bigger problem when cubes included more creatures with morph. To be like, is that a morph? But like in 2021, is that a morph is like a joke. Is somebody asked, like, no, they know it's a token. But
so this actually happens so frequently that I took the like 2 morph cards that were in my cube out of my cube like a few years ago.
It can't be a morph. There are no morphs.
Yeah, there's no morphs. Sorry, Den Protector. You outlast everyone else. Congratulations, but you got to go. But yeah, so on to dice. You need them. You should have. I mean, honestly, just getting one of those little bricks of dice, those little Chessex dice, that generally does it. I'm a big fan of being able to read dice, as evidence from dice they produce. Obviously, other people do not care as much about being able to read the dice. That's something that's important to me personally. But you know what? Do you? Like, it's nice to be able to look at the other side of the battlefield and say, oh, that has a 5 on it. Not saying, oh, that's got 12 and a half speckles.
Yeah, I usually I don't maintain the dice cubes. I end up just breaking them open. I used to do the dice pouches. I know that at PTQs, at least in the Midwest, it used to be very common to see people with the Crown Royal dice bag.
Yeah.
I currently just kind of keep a bunch of dice in a Dragon Shields sleeve box with no sleeves, just the dice are in there. Though my former roommate had a giant bowl of dice. There were just all kinds of dice. That was really nice to have on the table when we would play. Just whatever dice we needed were there. And he just keeps accruing more dice, and they go in that and it overflows. It's kind of like a crab, like a crustacean that keeps getting a new shell as more dice are added to the mass. It has to get a new bowl. Currently, I think it's living in 2 vases, which is obscene. And the thing about it is a lot of the dice are useful, though it does run into some problems on your issue with readability. But also some of the dice are just nonsense. Like some of them are like Scrabble dice, which I guess there was a Scrabble game that had dice. And then there's some that have words and some that have symbols. I don't know what they are. But if you go deep enough into the vase, you will find some numbers.
Yes. I also have a friend that just has... he actually has a big glass fish with its mouth open, and it's just basically a bowl of dice in there, which is quite nice.
Yeah,
but again, that's something you have if you have your cube shaped cube box at your house because you don't move it anywhere.
It's also good to have some spin downs, some 20-sided spin downs, because some people, unsophisticated types that don't appreciate the life total abacus, might want to use a spin down to track their life total. And if you only have D6, you will see people that will put the 4 5s together to be the life total. But then every game, somebody's going to reach for one of those dice at first on accident and then later just to be mean.
Yes, I've seen both of those situations. I've even seen it to where someone got into an argument over a life total. They asked what their life total was last turn. They were referring to their dice, and then in the middle of the argument, they grabbed all the other person's dice and said, well, what was your life total now? And while they did correctly answer the question, it didn't solve the discrepancy for some reason.
There was a bigger problem.
Yes. It was a crusade on that person's part to specifically not use pen and paper, even though it was provided for them. And that was, it had to be, it wasn't get to the point where people had to be separated, but there definitely had to be some cool off moments before the game resumed. And everyone just agreed that we were going to not use dice for the remainder of the evening for life totals. So I'd hate to see anyone get in that type of situation. Don't use dice for life totals, but you're going to have them for cards and planeswalkers and such.
Yeah, that's the more important thing. Yeah, planeswalkers. I have tracked planeswalker loyalty with stacked sideboard cards. That's no good. I
have to.
That's way worse than tokens. Have some dice with you.
All right. I have one more thing, and this is actually a really fun one. So I have in my cube box a handful of other cards, 16 of them, in fact, and they are currently basic lands, but I want them to be something else, like make them nicer later. But I have a sleeved mountain that has in a big bold Sharpie the letters 1 through 8 on 8 different mountains, and then a set of forests and islands, 4 of each. And I use those to determine seeding randomly and teams randomly. And I think that is a very easy thing that people can do to be able to do that. So everyone, everyone makes packs, and before everyone gets settled in, you're like, all right, we're going to hand out these randomly. Whoever gets 1 can sit wherever you want, and then we're going to go around the table 2 through 8 around that person. And then if you're doing teams, you can just do teams and you hand out the 8 cards, or however many you have. If you're doing 3v3 team draft, hand out 3 of each to randomly determine teams. It's quite useful. It comes up literally all the time, and it requires very minimal effort for I don't want to say a huge payoff, but the convenience factor is very high.
I like that.
Yeah.
We've gotten kind of lazy in our advanced age, where we typically sit where we want and then battle the person across the table. But that methodology is definitely good, especially if you are going to play a bunch of cubes, or if you want to play for stakes, or you just want people to give a shit about it. Kind of nice to make it more formal. That's
really what it is for me. Is the everyone just sit down is generally fine. But to make it like more of an event, I like to have a little bit more organization in the beginning. But that's also me. I'm gonna have that extra organization, and it's not for everyone, because sometimes people just want to sit down and cube, and this is another step that's essentially stopping people from cubing for another 30 seconds to a minute. So, which doesn't sound like much, but in the moment,
4 teams, you can just really grab any basics for the box too if you.
Yeah.
Just want to do it that way. Grab 4 of 2 different kinds, or if you're really lazy, we usually end up with like 4 islands and then versus non-islands. Whatever you're able to grab out of the box faster.
Yeah, which works perfectly.
So something that comes up when we play teams, I know every group does some amount of this, but how do you handle who stays at the table? So this is the thing that comes up for teams when you go to build your decks. It's not uncommon for teams to go to different tables. And then there was for a long time, the rule was if somebody called a table during pack 3, that player's team got to stay at the table and the other team had to build their deck somewhere else. But there was so much of people calling it in Pack 2, which is illegal. They should be kicked from the Cube draft. And so we just started doing other house rules where cubes ended up having their own table cards. If you drafted this or if you drafted the most of these, you got the table. Do you have any special table rules?
So there was a time that I had a card, the card Giant Slug, which is just a relevant card that just had in big, bold Sharpie table on it. And I would literally put that in the cube. And if you drafted it, your team got to have table. Like you actually had to spend a pick to draft it, so your team didn't have to move, and the other team had to move.
Love it.
We took that out because once people started being like, well, if I don't draft this and we just end up getting this 15th, I either have to make someone pick it 14th or earlier. So then it started going 15th because this is all within the same group of people. So then it started going 15th for like 4 drafts in a row. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't use that anymore. So then we reverted back to in Pack 3 calling table, and the same thing. Then it became an arms race. So essentially, what we changed to, which actually ended up working quite well, is you could call table at the end of Pack 2 after you've drafted your 15th card. So it doesn't exactly work to be to where whoever remembers first, but there has to be a rider on remembering. So if you remember, you can call it as long as you have completed your all of your 15 picks. So if you complete it, but then someone else completes it after you and calls table, then they get table. Their team gets table.
So the reason I started thinking about this is you mentioned possibly upgrading your team cards. I think what I would like is there's 4 cards that are table and the other 4 are some kind of way to mock the people that have to leave the table.
Okay. I like that too. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I'll be thinking about that one because that definitely comes up too.
4 cards that say table, 4 cards that say loser. You deal them out and you say losers walk.
Yep, I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna be thinking about that, Ryan. That's a good idea. Yeah, you could. That's even better. That's even better because then you set the teams in the beginning. And you immediately create division between the teams
exactly.
Beyond just being on different teams. And I'm all for that. Because then you're dealing at the teams and you're all sitting down and you realize if you're on the team that's going to have to leave, you are doing the draft on their home turf because you're going to have to leave those tables to build your decks.
Exactly.
Oh, this is great. See, I'm glad I didn't make nicer versions, and now I definitely want to.
Yeah, I might have to invest in that myself.
That's a good idea.
Really nice.
Okay, yeah, I like that. So I'm gonna upgrade from the mountains that say 1 through 8 to something nicer that's 1 through 8, and then some equivalent of table and loser, 4 of each of those. I'm all about that. All about it. Okay. I think for all of the extra stuff, I don't think there's anything else that I have to talk about.
I wouldn't be surprised if we put this out and somebody has a question and I go, oh, of course. But yeah, I don't know. I tend to be pretty good at improvising and adapting, but I think that this is pretty thorough. This should work for most people.
Yeah. And you know what? If there's inevitably, we have forgotten something.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always just hit us up on Twitter, and we'll get to our Twitter handles in a second at the outro. And just let us know, be like, hey, I thought you were going to talk about this. You didn't. What are your thoughts? And we'll definitely get to it. So, but I think that's the show. I think that's the show for today. So if you enjoyed what you heard, you can subscribe to the 540 on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Stitcher, YouTube, your local podcast app, anywhere you're listening to this at the time, or any of those places I mentioned. In some of those, you can even leave a review, whether it be a star review, maybe a little text review. We always appreciate that. You could leave a review and say, they talked about CubeMajigs. I really love them. They didn't like them. 1 star. And that would be fine because you know what? That's an algorithm accepting review, even though it would make me sad. It's something you could do. I don't want to encourage you to do that. Hopefully you just enjoyed it and you said, you know what? I love CubeMajigs. They hated them, even though we didn't hate them. But, it's the internet. So.
Not to disparage the product, but
No.
it would hurt my feelings if somebody said that they liked CubeMajigs more than me. I think that's a fair thing to say.
There you go. Yeah. And that's fine. I was, just saying on the internet, I would hate for someone to not use hyperbole in any situation they had an opportunity to. So maybe they would say we had a disagreement on CubeMajigs. However, I quite enjoyed the podcast. 5 stars. Would listen again. Thank you very much.
There we go.
If you want to let us know on Twitter of what we missed or maybe something you want to talk with us about further, you can hit me up at jparnell1 on Twitter. And of course, you can find my other podcast, Think Twice, by searching Think Twice MTG on any of the aforementioned places. And you can find my other content at Commander Versus on StarCityGames.com and YouTube. Ryan, you can also find him on Twitter, lurking about.
Yes, always lurking at Ryan Overdrive on Twitter. You can also find my articles on StarCityGames.com. This week, I am planning on writing about the Tinkerer's Cube, which is coming back to Magic Arena on Friday, which would be tomorrow, the date of the podcast drops. So I'm hopeful that I'll have what I need to have that article live on Friday. I'm going to do my best. But that's the plan there. Otherwise, you can find my articles weekly on StarCityGames.com and my general musings, and you can tag me to end my lurking at Ryan Overdrive.
Love it. I think that's the show. I think we've done it.
Yeah, you're all set now. You got your logistics covered.
Yep. We didn't talk about backpacks. Just kidding. We don't need to talk about backpacks.
You get your ultimate guard.
It does work really well. I actually have one of those.
Yeah, they didn't give me one. I chilled for their brand for years, and Patrick eventually got one. I didn't complain about it. Patrick complained about it a lot. Patrick Sullivan ended up getting his Ultimate Guard backpack from Cedric. So I have nothing good to say about that backpack.
You should complain to Pat, and then have Pat complain to Cedric.
I should try to get Pat's backpack.
That might work too.
There's no way he uses it.
Yeah, well, think about it like this. Pat didn't want the backpack. He wanted to complain until he got the backpack. That's not the same thing exactly.
Yeah.
You just want the backpack.
Right.
So this could be a symbiotic relationship between you two.
Yeah, we can work this out.
Then if you take the backpack, boom, new complaint equity. Pat goes back to, I don't have a backpack, Cedric. Where's my backpack? So then we start the cycle over again. Everybody wins, except for, of course, Cedric, who loses 100% of these scenarios. But that's fine. That's what it's about.
It's perfect.
Anyway, thank you all very much for listening. Supposedly there's going to be some new spoilers and previews on the horizon for the next couple of weeks. So check back then. But until then, thank you for listening to the 540. We'll catch you next time.